The CEO's fancy espresso machine was at it again, hissing and sputtering like the devil himself had set up a sauna in the break room. I grumbled under my breath while wedging myself behind the server rack, a flashlight clenched between my teeth and a sad, 2-day-old banana forgotten in my pocket. Turns out that cursed coffee contraption shared a breaker with the East Wing HVAC, something I only learned after the legendary latte-triggered blackout back in 2011. Naturally, nobody ever bothered to record that little detail. Nobody writes down anything around here except me. But I remember. I always remember. That morning had started the same way it had for the last 21 years. Me, Claudia Renee Maddox, unlocking the office door at 6:47 a.m. sharp, 23 minutes before we officially opened, with the original brass key they handed me in 2002. I kept that key oiled twice a year. You'd be surprised how many executives can't even turn a lock if it squeaks. They just assume it's broken, the same way they assume their common sense doesn't apply. The cleaning crew had left a wad of gum in the sink again. Somebody from product thought the office fridge was their personal sushi locker and abandoned a roll in there over the weekend. The kombucha had exploded too. Technically, not my job. Not in any contract. But guess who wound up scraping dried seaweed off a smart fridge with nothing but a laminated calendar and a plastic spatula? That's right, me. Most days I felt like the human version of duct tape. Holding everything together, never saying a word, only noticed when something snapped or fell apart. The CEO still thought I was just the receptionist, even though my business card said Facilities and Operations Manager. My inbox was drowning in 3,200 urgent emails from people who couldn't swap out a toner cartridge if their crypto investments depended on it. Things went downhill fast after they brought in that new HR director, Sabrina. Fresh out of grad school, all trendy buzzwords and a smile full of teeth. She once asked me, dead serious, where the Ethernet cable plugged in. I told her, in the wall, sweetheart. Same place your job performance is headed. She didn't crack a smile. Now, I'm no TikTok guru, but I hear about 97% of you listening to stories like mine don't bother subscribing. That's like showing up to a potluck empty-handed and still leaving with Tupperware. So go on, hit that button. Keeps the lights on and the petty revenge stories flowing. Anyway, back to the mess. I didn't go to fancy schools. Didn't own blazers that cost more than my truck. But I knew that building, not in some landlord's way, but like an old dog. I knew which pipes groaned when the rain was coming. Which thermostat threw a tantrum at 70% humidity. Which fuse box door creaked like a haunted dollhouse if you opened it too quick. I'd kept that company alive through power surges, bathroom floods, and 3 different CEOs worth of bad decisions. And for what? No recognition. No bonus. Not even a thank you card. The one time I stayed late to unclog the women's restroom, after someone dropped their badge in it, don't even ask, the VP of Finance handed me half a protein bar and said, "You're a saint, Carrie." My name's Miranda. After a while, I stopped correcting them. I wasn't looking to be some kind of hero. I just believed in doing things the right way. Take the Lease, for example, the one that gave us prime downtown real estate for 1/10 of what it costs now. I negotiated that deal back when no landlord would even return our calls. Back when we were 5 people and a fax machine held together with chewing gum. The founder asked me to co-sign. Hell, I just put the whole thing under my own name. Nobody else had the credit back then, and I didn't mind. They felt like family. But, like most families, they eventually forgot who actually kept the lights on. Ever walk into a building you've tended for decades and realize nobody notices you unless the printer jams or there's a mouse in the break room? That was me. Invisible until disaster struck. Then suddenly I was everybody's grandma and janitor rolled into one. And if the AC quit? Oh, then I was Queen Miranda, savior of sweat. So yeah, I kept showing up. Quiet, reliable, solid as furniture. Until that Monday. An email went out from HR about strategic realignment opportunities. Now, in plain English, that's the corporate equivalent of a mobster saying, "Take a ride with us." My stomach dropped. I'd seen enough CEOs cry into LaCroix during layoffs to know what was coming. My number was up. And I wasn't about to shed tears over it. Instead, I started making a mental list of everything they conveniently forgot they owed me. This time, I wasn't going to clean up their mess. At 4:58 p.m. Right as I was scraping a dried burrito off the copper glass counter, the invite hit my inbox. Subject line, Quick Sync HR. No explanation, no warning, just a calendar event dumped onto my schedule like a turd in the punch bowl. The next morning, I showed up right on time, wearing my gray cardigan, the one with a hole in the elbow and a stain shaped like Delaware. That sweater had survived 3 CEOs, 1 office fire, and a surprise baby shower that ended in divorce. It was more than clothing, it was armor. Sabrina from HR was already perched in conference room B, smiling at me like some stepmom out of a Lifetime movie. Next to her sat a guy from legal I'd never seen before. Slick hair, shinier shoes, and a folder he kept petting like it held the cure for cancer. "Miranda, thanks for coming in," Sabrina chirped. "We wanted to have a little restructuring conversation." That word, restructuring, hit me harder than a sack of hammers. I'd been through this song and dance for other people plenty of times, held their hands, covered their shifts, walked them out when HR gave them the boot. I knew the rhythm by heart. First came the fake smile, then the mysterious folder, then the apology that never actually said sorry. "We're going in a new direction," Sabrina chirped. I just stared at her. That new direction wouldn't happen to include me in it, huh? Silence. Then the folder slid across the table, soft as a snake. Inside was a severance package as cold and generic as a dollar store greeting card, tied up with more red tape than a Christmas crime scene. 3 months' pay. An NDA. Health insurance that cut off at the end of the month. Real generous. The letter didn't even get my name right, called me Claudia J. Maddox. 21 years in, and they still couldn't be bothered to spell my damn name. "We'll need your badge and keys today," the lawyer droned, monotone like he was reading a grocery list. "And any company property in your possession." I took a breath so deep it could have cracked drywall, reached into my bag, and laid my badge down on the table like it was a poker chip I didn't care to cash. Next came the keys. All 11 of them, neatly labeled in my handwriting from back in 2002, back when I stayed late reprogramming door locks myself. "You sure?" I asked, eyes locked on Sabrina. She blinked. "Sorry, let me rephrase. You sure you want these? Last chance." She gave me that classic HR look, soft, sympathetic, fake as margarine. "It's not personal," she said. "Sure it ain't," I muttered, pushing up from my chair. "But just remember, you can't fire what you never understood." I walked out before I set the place on fire with my glare. Outside, the sunlight felt sharp, almost mean, against my skin. The street was alive with noise, cars, chatter, city hum, but all I felt was numb. I didn't cry. Not in front of them. Not after 21 years of cleaning up their garbage, fixing their machines, babysitting their interns through panic attacks. They wanted to forget me? Fine. But they forgot too much. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I swung into a Dunkin' parking lot, turned off the AC, and just sat there for a minute, staring at the steering wheel. Then I called Derek. Derek was my old neighbor's kid. Used to mow my lawn for $5 a pop. Now he's a real estate lawyer with a Bluetooth headset permanently fused to his ear and a nervous twitch whenever somebody says, arbitration. He picked up on the second ring. "Miranda? Everything okay?" "No," I said. "But it's about to be. You remember that lease we put together in '02? There was a pause, then a low whistle. "Oh, that lease. Yup. Do they know?" I smiled for the first time that day. Not a kind smile, the dangerous kind. They just asked me for the keys. So I think it's time I give them everything they asked for. Back at home, my place smelled like lemon pledge and old war movies, my version of sanity. I dropped my bag by the door, kicked off my shoes, and went straight to the hallway closet. That's where I kept my in case they try something stupid file. Never thought I'd actually need to crack it open, but here we were. The folder was hot pink, labeled in thick Sharpie, Lease 2002, Miranda only. I pulled it out the way you'd handle a bomb, careful and steady. Inside, the original lease agreement, 7 amendments, a receipt for the rug I bought for the lobby back when we couldn't afford furniture, and 3 sticky notes with doodles from the founder's kid back when the office was one dingy room above a Thai takeout joint. 21 years ago, they couldn't land a lease to save their lives. No credit. No revenue. Just one beat-up laptop and a fax machine that screeched like a dying raccoon. The founder, Victor, had sat across from me in a Denny's booth and said, "Miranda, if you don't co-sign, we'll be working out of my garage. My wife will kill me." But I didn't just co-sign. I signed the whole damn lease myself. "Just until we get on our feet," he promised. We never spoke about it again. After that, it was always me who renewed the lease. Me who dealt with the property manager. Me who coordinated HVAC installs, carpet replacements, and hunted down the source of that weird smell in Suite B, which turned out to be a dead squirrel stuffed in the insulation. And through all those years, through every upgrade and expansion, they never once took my name off the lease. Never even thought to ask. I dropped myself into the chair at my kitchen table, cracked open a frosty Diet Dr. Pepper, and spread the lease in front of me like maybe, just maybe, my self-respect was hiding somewhere in the fine print. Page 12. Section 9b. Clear as day, renewal of lease term requires written notice from the lessee no later than 30 days before expiration. I stared at the words, blinked, and read them one more time just to be sure my brain wasn't playing tricks. My eyes drifted down to the expiration date, August 1st. And then it hit me, today was August 3rd. 2 days late. They hadn't bothered to renew. Not a single courtesy email. No frantic voicemail from their legal department. No pleading note from Sabrina. Not even a whisper about zoning, rent, or that stack of boring but vital paperwork. Absolutely nothing. They'd been too busy giving each other new job titles, throwing themselves little parties, and patting their own backs over some shiny, strategic realignment, all while blowing right past the most important deadline their company would ever face. I eased back in my chair, and I could feel a grin creep across my face, slow, sharp, dangerous. It was the kind of smile a man gets when the universe decides to hand him the keys to the kingdom on a silver platter. See, it wasn't just that they fired me. It was the way they did it. Like I was nothing more than a streak on the window. Just another middle-aged woman, disposable, carrying around a binder full of what they called trivia. But here's the truth, my so-called trivia kept that entire building breathing. And now they'd flat out forgotten. I wasn't just some former employee. I was still the lessee. The legal tenant on that contract. Which meant, as of this very moment, they weren't respectable tenants of a prime downtown property. No, they were squatters, with fancy espresso machines. I picked up my phone and started scrolling through the digital receipts of their negligence. Insurance policy? Still listed under my name. HVAC contract? I renewed it myself last year using my personal email. Cleaning service? They only showed up because I sent the manager a monthly Venmo labeled Building Freshness Fund. Utilities? All tied to a business account I set up way back in 2005, back when running the microwave and the printer at the same time would trip the breaker. Every single artery of that company, every line that kept them alive, still ran directly through me. Now, sure, I could have given them a heads up. Fired off a polite email. Maybe forwarded the lease with a cheeky subject line, "Hey, missed a spot." But, let's be real, that's not what they would have done if the shoe was on the other foot. No, sir. If it were me, they'd already be halfway through replacing me with some fresh-faced kid who'd need YouTube just to figure out how to reset a circuit breaker. So I snapped the lease folder shut. Poured myself another cold Dr. Pepper. And for the first time in 21 long years, I decided silence was the better play. Let them stew in it. Let them wander right up to the cliff's edge without ever realizing where their feet were. Let the hiss of their precious espresso machine be the first warning bell. Because as far as the law was concerned, they weren't tenants anymore. They were trespassers. And I had the papers to prove it. When it came time to meet with the property manager, I slid on my church shoes, not because I needed to look sharp, but because those shoes made a satisfying, echoing click across marble floors. I wanted the whole building to hear me coming. Julian, the property manager, lifted his eyes from his computer screen when I walked into his fourth-floor office. He was one of those guys who always seemed to smell faintly like printer toner, and his desk was littered with what had to be 17 different highlighters, each probably meant for some grand organizational system that never made sense. "Miranda," he said, his eyebrows climbing halfway up his forehead. "Didn't expect to see you back around here." I gave him a smile. "Let's just say I'm here in more of a legacy capacity," I told him. Julian cocked his head at me like a golden retriever trying to figure out a magic trick. I took a seat, slid the folder out of my bag, and handed him the whole lease packet, original document, amendments, everything still in mint condition. Even the little sticky note from our 2009 renewal meeting was there, the one where the founder got bored and doodled a flying burrito in the corner. "I want to confirm something," I said, steady. "There was no written renewal request submitted by July 1st, right?" He blinked and started pounding at his keyboard like it had personally offended him. No. Not from the company. Nothing in the system. I just figured they'd gone month to month while negotiating something new. We never got anything official." I nodded, cool as stone. "Good. That lines up. Because Clause 9V says it defaults to month if there's no notice." Julian leaned back and his chair groaned like an old knee. "Technically, yeah. That's right." I reached into my bag again, slow and deliberate, and pulled out a document on thick, heavy paper with gold-embossed letterhead. "I'd like to officially notify you of a lease termination. Effective in 30 days. His eyebrows shot up so high I half expected him to fill out workers' comp paperwork for the injury. "Wait, you're terminating it?" "Yep," I said, calm. "As the lessee of record. They missed the renewal window. And I've already got a replacement tenant lined up." He swallowed hard. "Do they know?" "They will." The new tenant was a wellness startup called Bloom Pulse, a bunch of green juice fanatics with artisanal air purifiers, backed by too much investor money. They were dying for downtown space to show off their Himalayan salt wall and kombucha taps. I'd met their founder at a farmer's market the year before while I was buying beets. She'd offered me triple what the current lease was worth without blinking. Julian ran a hand through his thinning hair. "This is gonna be messy." "Messy?" I stood. "Messy is what they gave me after 2 decades of loyalty." I walked out before he could ask another question. Back home, I opened a fresh legal template on my laptop and filled in the blanks. Plaintiff, Claudia Renee Maddox. Defendant, current occupant, Suite 201 to 221. Reason for eviction, failure to renew lease, material breach, and unauthorized subletting. Because yeah, turns out they'd quietly rented a back office to some crypto consultant without ever telling me. Another one of their little oversights. I filed it online through the county portal and paid the extra fee to expedite. A confirmation email hit my inbox with a cheerful ding that made me feel younger than Botox ever could. And then, like clockwork, HR decided to reach out. Subject, request confirmation of returned property. Dear Miranda, hope you're doing well. We're reaching out to confirm you've returned all company property, including documentation, keys, badges, and any other physical or digital assets belonging to company name. Please respond to confirm completion. Best, Sabrina. I didn't hesitate. I hit reply all, because Sabrina loved CCNG half the company to make herself look important. My response, yes. Including the ones you forgot I had. Click. Send. Lean back. That building had meant something to me once. I'd watched it grow from bare drywall and tangled Ethernet cords into something polished and gleaming. I'd eaten more lunches at the front desk than I had in my own kitchen. I'd laughed with interns. I'd cried when I lost my dog and someone left flowers on the break room table for me. But love has limits. And mine expired about 2 days after they shoved that folder across the table. I wasn't just getting even anymore. I was taking back what was mine. 2 mornings later, I stood in my sunroom, watering my peace lily with one hand and holding a certified letter in the other. Heavy envelope. Real ink signature. Stamped with county court markings. Plaintiff, Claudia Renee Maddox. Defendant, company name Eton. Occupant, Suite 201 to 221. Subject, notice of termination and demand to vacate premises. My name sat there in bold at the top. It felt surreal, like reading your own obituary over morning coffee. Except this wasn't death. This was resurrection. Sure, a resurrection in sweatpants and orthopedic slippers, but resurrection nonetheless. Across town, that same envelope landed in reception at 9:13 a.m. sharp. The property manager sent it priority mail and even emailed a copy just to be sure. Standard procedure. 30-day notice. Tenant failed to renew. New occupancy scheduled. Kindly vacate or respond through legal channels. Problem was, the receptionist that day was a temp. Her name tag said Maya in pink glitter pen. She probably figured it was junk mail. So she tossed it straight into the recycling bin, wedged between a box of expired Kind bars and a busted laminator. Meanwhile, upstairs in the executive lounge, the leadership team was busy polishing their egos to a high shine. IPO talks. Branding refreshes. One of them was even giving a presentation about disrupting verticals, whatever the hell that meant. I saw the slide deck later on LinkedIn. It had a stock photo of a woman laughing while eating a salad and pointing at a whiteboard. Real groundbreaking. They were so busy floating in their own soup of ambition that they couldn't even see the tide pulling out from under them. I sat on my couch, rereading the notice. Not because I doubted the legality. Derek had made sure every line was airtight. I just needed to feel it again. The weight. The consequence. This wasn't some HR slap fight anymore. This was a time bomb wrapped in bureaucracy, tied up with a bow of red tape. And I'd already lit the fuse. For a brief moment, 20 seconds, maybe, I felt guilt trying to worm its way in. That building had been my second home. I'd patched its cracks, soothed its groans, kept it humming and warm. I'd witnessed weddings announced there. Babies born. Affairs sparked and burned out with equal intensity. It had meant something once. But now? Now it was just a box filled with people who thought legacy meant slow. So I folded the notice, tucked it back into the envelope, and slid it into my filing cabinet, right behind my divorce papers and 2 unpaid parking tickets I was saving for sport. That's when my phone buzzed. Eli, facilities guy. Hey, you okay? Something's weird around here. Front desk got a court notice, but nobody's talking. Place feels off. Eli was one of the good ones. Quiet guy. He could swap out a fluorescent ballast without whining about it. Once even helped me chase a possum out of the break room ceiling tiles. I almost texted back I'm fine. But it felt dishonest. So instead of I'm fine, I texted Eli back, I'm more than okay. For the first time in years, I'm finally being seen. He didn't answer right away, probably busy trying to piece together whatever rumors were swirling around the building. I could already picture the chaos. The execs assuming the notice was some clerical mix-up, or a practical joke, or maybe blaming it on a vendor. They were good at that, outsourcing responsibility the way other people outsource janitorial services. But the fuse was lit, and I'd already stacked the matchbox, the gasoline, and the fire extinguisher just far enough out of their reach that they'd never get to it in time. The conference room at Derek's law office smelled like burnt coffee and ambition laminated in plastic. Fake plants drooped in the corners. A motivational poster on the wall screamed success over a photo of a mountain climber seconds away from falling to his death. Derek sat across from me in a pinstripe suit that made him look like a nervous ventriloquist's dummy, though his hands were steady as he slid the final lease transfer packet across the table. All you gotta do, he said, tapping the page, is sign here under outgoing lessee, and again on page 4 under authorizing party. He hesitated, pen hovering. You sure about this? I glanced down at the paper, crisp, clinical, cold as Sabrina's fake smile. Incoming tenant, Bloompulse Incorporated effective date, August 31st, 12 p.m. sharp. Terms, $12,800 per month, triple net. 5-year contract. Signature, Claudia Renee Maddox. I picked up the pen. No second thoughts? Derek asked. Only that I should have done this sooner, I said. The pen scraped across the page like a guillotine blade. And just like that, 21 years of history, loyalty, and invisible labor shifted from me to a kombucha empire with a Pinterest mood board. Derek sighed. I'll get this over to the property manager this afternoon. Judge already signed off on the eviction. You'll see a posting within 48 hours. I raised an eyebrow. They've got 48 hours to clear out? He nodded. From the moment that notice hits the door, no appeals, no wiggle room. They missed the renewal, they sublet illegally, and they ignored the termination paperwork. You handed them the rope, Miranda. They built the gallows. I left his office with the documents tucked neatly inside a manila folder. I'd labeled it closure. Not revenge, not even justice, just closure. That's what this was now. A clean, surgical ending to 2 decades of being invisible while keeping the ceiling from collapsing. That night, I drove downtown. The city looked different in the dark, shinier, colder, like everything had been dipped in chrome and regret. I parked across from the building, killed the engine, and sat in the silence with the headlights off. The executive suites still blazed with light, probably burning through thousands in overtime pay and overpriced sushi catering. Sabrina was no doubt polishing up another hollow slideshow about company culture. The CEO was probably in some corner, glass of scotch in one hand, lies rehearsed in the other, practicing his investor pitch in the mirror. I sipped cheap gas station coffee, rolled down the window, and let the night air wash over me. The building stood there like a clueless giant, glowing and silent, lit up like Christmas Eve and just as blind to the storm about to hit. That same building that once felt like mine now looked like a stranger. I tilted my head up towards Suite 221, the corner office. My old desk. Now occupied by some project manager who probably thought HVAC stood for happy vibes and coffee. I smiled, not out of spite, not even out of joy. It was the kind of smile you make when you watch a freight train barreling toward a man too distracted by his phone to hear it coming. Tomorrow morning, the county marshal would tape a fluorescent orange notice to their glass doors. And from that moment, the clock would start. 48 hours. Every whiteboard brainstorm, every yoga ball, every beanbag in their so-called innovation zone gone. Loaded into a moving truck. Bloom Pulse waiting right behind them, cash in hand and incense burning. I stayed parked there until I saw the lights start to flicker off. Then I drove home, windows down, wind in my hair, that manila folder riding shotgun. For the first time since 2003, I felt a real kind of peace, the kind that comes when you finally realize gratitude has an expiration date, but leverage? Leverage stays fresh forever. At exactly 8:03 the next morning, Sabrina strutted into the building like a Macy's mannequin on parade. Almond milk latte in hand, beige pumps clicking against the tile like an applause track only she could hear. She stopped at the front desk and flashed the temp receptionist her stage smile. "Any messages?" she chirped. Maya, the receptionist, blinked and said, yeah, something weird on the CEO's door." Sabrina rolled her eyes, probably assuming it was another one of IT's passive-aggressive jokes. Last week they'd taped a Leni DeVito meme under the thermostat after someone cranked it up to 82. By 8:07 she was on the second floor. By 8:08 she was standing in front of the CEO's office, her jaw hanging open like a python at a barbecue. There it was, the fluorescent orange eviction notice. Laminated. Zip-tied to the door handle. Signed, sealed, served. Notice to vacate property. Breach of lease. 48 hours. Her hands shook like she'd just overdosed on oat milk as she pulled out her phone to dial building security. She tried to tear the notice off the glass, but it clung tight, unyielding, like judgment itself. By 8:30 the CEO arrived, unshaven, Bluetooth jammed in his ear, probably thinking he was walking into another Crush the Quarter pep session. Instead, he found Sabrina pacing, the marketing team gawking, and a bright orange legal notice zip-tied to his door like a giant game over screen. He yanked at it, scanned it, blinked once. Then again. By 9:02 his phone was ringing. Julian, the property manager, on the other end. "Mr. Feldman," Julian said, calm and corporate, "this is to confirm enforcement of the eviction. You were notified by certified mail and email more than 2 weeks ago. We got no response, so we assumed your silence was intentional." "Intentional?" Feldman barked. Who in their right mind would ignore a 30-day legal notice? Julian didn't even bother hiding the smirk in his voice. By 9:10, the panic set in. One by one, the executives drifted into the office, each reacting to that orange sheet like someone had dropped a live grenade on the carpet. HR scrambled to pull an emergency meeting in the glass-walled conference room, where transparency was more literal than philosophical. They pulled the blinds halfway down, only to realize too late they didn't cover the bottom. So the entire floor watched the meltdown unfold like it was a live reality TV broadcast. By about 10:15, somebody finally pieced it together. Sabrina opened her laptop, pulled up the scanned court documents they'd all ignored, and there it was in black and white. Plaintiff, Claudia Renee Maddox-Waite. Miranda, she whispered, like saying my name out loud might change it. Eli from facilities, bless that man, nodded over his coffee in the break room. Told you something was off, he said. Meanwhile, I was back in my sunroom, tea steeping, cat curled up on my lap, phone buzzing like a beehive. Derek's text came through first. It's done. They called security. Marshall's coming tomorrow. You're a legend. Eli followed up with his own message. They look like ants in a microwave. Proud of you. Then the local business blog broke the story. Downtown tech firm evicted amid lease dispute. Insider hints at mismanagement meltdown. They didn't use my name, but the comments section filled in the blanks quick. Someone uploaded a grainy photo of the eviction notice. Another chimed in, wasn't their office manager there, like, 20 years? And someone else replied, yeah, and she knew where all the bodies were buried. I just sipped my tea. 2 decades buried under invisible work and thankless tasks. Nobody gave me flowers on admin day. Nobody noticed when I stayed until 9 p.m., stabbing a router reset button with a ballpoint pen. But they were noticing now. What they didn't realize was that this wasn't even the final act. Not yet. At 7:42 that evening, my phone rang while I was halfway through alphabetizing my spice rack. A woman needs orders somewhere in this godless world. The screen lit up with a name I hadn't seen since the night he forgot mine at the Christmas party, Feldman, Marcus. CEO. I let it ring twice, 3 times. Picked up on the 4th. Miranda speaking. He didn't waste breath. What the hell is going on? You can't do this. His voice cracked like a teenager caught with a vape pen. I put him on speaker, poured myself a glass of wine, and leaned against the counter like I was settling in for my favorite sitcom. Because honestly, I was. I absolutely can, I said, calm as fresh snow. And I already did. Do you have any idea what this looks like? The board's panicking. The press is circling like vultures. Our investors. I cut him off with a sigh. Marcus, let me stop you right there. You fired the one person who held all the keys. Every single one, building, legal, operational memory. And you never even asked who signed the lease. We assumed it was. That's the problem, I said. You assumed. About me, about the company, about what I was worth. Silence. Just a wheezy breath on the line, probably his blood pressure scaling Mount Stupid. You blindsided us, he tried, grasping for the victim role. No, I corrected. I responded to being blindsided. Differences, I came prepared. While he sputtered, I opened my laptop, drafted a new email. To CEO at, legal at Sabrina. HR at, facilities at. Subject, company property, as requested. Attached is the complete original lease agreement with all amendments, rider clauses, and the subletting violations you failed to disclose. As you requested confirmation that I returned all company documents, consider this fulfillment of that request. Attachment, lease termination _MJH signed. PDF. I hit send while Feldman was still puffing into the receiver. You think this won't come back on you? He snarled. The board's going to. Oh. They'll do what they always do, I said, swirling my wine. Protect themselves. Maybe even toss you to the wolves if they get hungry enough. But they won't call me. Because I've got the paperwork. And Bloompulse already wired the first 2 months' rent. That shut him up cold. And just to be clear, I added, I didn't sell the company out. I just stopped carrying it on my back. The line went quiet, then clicked dead. I didn't grin, didn't smirk. I just stood there in my kitchen, feeling the weight of years slide off me like chipped paint in a thunderstorm. Bloompulse was set to move in the following Monday. They already had a banner printed, "Your vibe starts here." Not my style, but hey, They paid on time and they could read a lease. Meanwhile, the old crew scrambled to scrounge up a temporary office that wasn't a strip mall conference room or the CEO's overpriced condo with no Wi-Fi. I raised my glass to the empty kitchen. To endings. To leverage. To being underestimated until it was too damn late. They wanted company property returned. I just gave it back, with interest. By Friday, the panic had gone nuclear. They were cold calling every commercial landlord within 10 miles, throwing Hail Marys like confetti. Rumor was, they even tried bribing Julian, the property manager, with concert tickets and promises of reputation management opportunities. One exec supposedly offered him a founding wellness partnership, whatever the hell that means. Didn't matter. Too late. Bloom Pulse already had their lease inked, notarized, and hanging framed in Suite 221. Their founder was picking out wallpaper with eucalyptus leaves and corny affirmations. The tech company? They were about to be tossed out like a frat house that forgot to pay rent. Monday morning hit like a piano dropped from the 10th floor. I sat on my porch with a mug of black coffee, an old radio playing classic rock, and the chaos unfolding just 4 blocks away. The sky was clear, the birds were singing, and down on 6th Street, the so-called darlings of downtown were wheeling Herman Miller chairs and half-empty K-cups into a rented U-Haul with one busted taillight. Sabrina, hiding behind sunglasses the size of her ego, barked into her phone like she was negotiating Middle East peace. Someone taped a printer sheet to the side of the truck that read strategic relocation. Nice try. A crowd gathered, phones out, filming. Then came the chair. Feldman himself, tan suit, sweat stains, red-faced, snapped. He hurled a folding chair against the U-Haul, the clang echoing down the street like a sad cymbal. The video hit the internet within the hour. Caption: when your office karma hits harder than your IPO plans. By that afternoon, it had gone viral, front page of Tech Slam, then Fail Whale, then Cringe Bay. The comments were merciless. Did they evict him or unplug his ego? Chair toss equals leadership under pressure. Someone tell him furniture throwing doesn't change zoning laws. Back home, I got a knock on the door. A courier stood there holding a gift basket wrapped in cellophane, organic fruit, lavender tea, a tiny jar of turmeric gummies. On top, a note in looping handwriting. Miranda, thanks for the space. And the story. We'll take good care of it. The Bloom Pulse team. I laughed. A real laugh, deep and belly-shaking, the first in a long, long time. I set the basket on the counter, poured myself a glass of sangria, and walked down the hallway. On the wall, next to family photos and my framed first paycheck from 1981, was a little brass hook. From a drawer, I pulled out the one thing I'd saved all these years. No plaque, no ceremony. Just metal and memory, the original office key. I hung it like a trophy. Not because it opened anything now, but because once it opened everything. And now? It closed the chapter exactly the way I wanted, quietly, legally, permanently. Appreciate you sticking around, you legends of the break room, I whispered. Then I raised my glass. Here's to making your old managers spill their coffee in fear.